Good afternoon. Welcome to Caribbean Exports webinar to mark International Micro, Small and Medium Enterprise Day. It's an important day for us all, as we know, in the current situation that we're in with COVID-19. We wanted to be able to mark MSME Day to be able to share some of the experiences, see what we can do to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 on MSMEs from CARIFORUM countries, and also identify and leverage the opportunities that may come about through collaboration with one another. Now, I would like to obviously firstly introduce our opening and welcoming remarks. Her Excellency Ambassador Sheila Sealy-Monteith, Ambassador of Jamaica, Coordinator of the CARIFORUM Group of Ambassadors in Brussels, His Excellency Mr. Percival Marie, Director General, CARIFORUM Directorate, and Mr. Anthony Bradshaw, who is our Officer in Charge at the Caribbean Export Development Agency. Now, without further ado, I would like to hand over to Ambassador Sealy-Monteith to give her welcome remarks. I will just hand over. Okay.
Sorry, my screen is. I'm sorry, participants. I am right here. My screen just froze for a moment there. I hope you're still hearing me.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. These things happen. Excellencies, colleagues who I hope are also participating, representatives of governments and private sectors and their institutions, ladies and gentlemen, and colleagues who are on the panel and who are joining us today. It's an honor for me to address this very timely webinar, and I do so on behalf of Caribbean countries with embassies in Brussels as their coordinator. This morning, the OACPS commemorated World MSME Day and did so with an event pretty much like this one, with speakers who were able to share the range of experiences across African, Caribbean, and Pacific countries and regions, and the commonalities could not be missed. You can expect that our expert speakers in this afternoon's event will provide you with more profound and thought-provoking thoughts than I could share on the many issues which accompany any discourse on the place of MSMEs in Caribbean economies. From my vantage point as a diplomat, we are always open to learning about the increasingly important role that these expressions of the private sector experience play in our regions and society. It is undeniable that MSMEs play a critical role in the Caribbean region in both formal and informal sectors. MSMEs represent around 90% of the entrepreneurial fabric and a share of employment that fluctuates between 50 to 70% across the region. Naturally, the developments in recent months have cast a special focus on all our economies, and in particular on MSMEs. The COVID-19 pandemic has hit the Caribbean region in a period of economic weakness and macroeconomic vulnerability. The drivers of economic growth and resilience to social vulnerability of the region have been particularly impacted in three areas: public investment, tourism and hospitality, and remittances. The pandemic has put the public finance of our region into extreme stress, with the Caribbean economies expected to contract by 2.6%, exacerbated by the effects of the lockdown and the lower demand for labor-intensive tourism services. It is also estimated that remittance flows to the Caribbean could contract by 10 to 15% in 2020, with devastating impacts on the countries of the region, such as Haiti and Jamaica, where remittances used at 80 to 90% to cover basic needs such as food and such as food and housing of recipient countries, represented over 30% of GDP and over 15% of GDP respectively in both those countries in 2018. Caribbean MSMEs are now facing substantial falls in revenue, difficulties in obtaining credit, and an increased likelihood of insolvency. The significant share of SMEs in job creation, accounting for more than 50% of formal employment, has amplified the adverse impacts on employment as this sector has been badly hit by the crisis. The negative impact of the COVID-19 crisis on the Caribbean MSME sector is all the more devastating in that MSMEs are at the center of the much needed job creation, the industrial development, and the export competitiveness agenda of our regions. Indeed, the prospects for the survival of large enterprises are not encouraging and are even more devastating for MSMEs. Ladies and gentlemen, there are critical lessons to be learned from the pandemic, none more compelling than that it dealt a double hand of challenges and opportunities, perhaps not in the proportions we would have wanted. Even as the death knell was being sounded for some MSMEs, others were quickly re-engineering themselves to find a place in COVID-19 environment. In the agricultural sector, for example, some took on new forms to become not only producers, but also distributors of their own produce. Innovation and creativity were tools that reaped benefits in many sectors as MSMEs sought to respond. While we do not wish to minimize in any way the challenges faced, the situation also allowed us to see a new context and scope for the use of digital technology to support the development and growth of MSMEs. In a post-COVID environment, all of you who are players within this sector will be called upon to use the experiences of a most difficult situation to help to rewrite the approach in some respects and strengthen the underpinnings in others. Digital literacy must be a key component of the revival. Notable among those most impacted were women and youth, who mostly comprise the operators in the sector. They need to be identified for special consideration and their efforts to start their businesses supported with the necessary tools. In closing, ladies and gentlemen, the convening of this webinar is therefore very timely and is theme most appropriate for focusing attention on this sector. It is the hope that through this activity, Caribbean institutions will be encouraged to further reaffirm their commitment to support the private sector. I'm therefore looking forward to your deliberations around the critical issues of building the resilience of Caribbean MSMEs and positioning them for better success within and beyond the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. I wish you all a very productive and fulfilling engagement. I thank you.
Thank you very much for your opening remarks there. We will now move on to Mr. Percival Marie, Director General at the CARIFORUM Directorate. Oh, sorry, Mr. Anthony Bradshaw. My mistake. Mr. Anthony Bradshaw, Officer in Charge at Caribbean Export Development Agency.
Thank you. All protocols observed. On behalf of Caribbean Export Development Agency, we would like to thank the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States for inviting us to participate in this important forum on SME Day. The timeliness of the discussions which will occur today cannot be overstated. Given the IMF has noted the world is currently experiencing the worst downturn since the Great Depression. In addition, UNCTAD in its World Investment Report 2020 notes that global FDI flows are forecasted to drop by as much as 40% from last year's figure of 1.54 trillion. Furthermore, in Latin America and the Caribbean is expected to fall as much as 50% in 2020, and in Africa, FDI flows are forecasted to fall between 25 and 40%. Within this context, SMEs throughout the ACP are without doubt fighting for their economic survival. In the Caribbean region, a stark picture is painted as many SMEs have been thrust into a severe cash flow crisis, which has been identified as the most significant challenge facing SMEs, according to a recent survey conducted by Caribbean Export. For Caribbean Export, we view what may come to be known as the Great Lockdown as an opportunity for SMEs to confront adversity, reinvent themselves in an increasingly digital economy supported by a flexible and responsive enabling environment. Caribbean Export is a focal point in the region for private sector development for the ACP, working closely with the CARIFORUM Directorate and CARIFORUM ambassadors in Brussels. We're mandated to implement numerous program-based activities designed to enhance the competitiveness of SMEs within CARIFORUM and the wider Caribbean. The agency focuses on export and investment promotion and is currently implementing the 11th PDS Regional Private Sector Development Program. SMEs play a vital role in the development of CARIFORUM states through their contribution to social and economic resilience. According to the Association of Caribbean States in Latin America and the Caribbean, SMEs account for 90 to 95% of businesses created in the manufacturing and services sectors, generating 85 to 90% of jobs and contributing up to 40% of GDP. Participation in international trade is also a significant channel through which SMEs have contributed to sustainable development, although at the regional level, non-energy exports to the EU have been declining. With the forecasted contraction of global demand and disruptions in supply chains due to the COVID pandemic, the declining economic activity is expected to further put downward pressure on our exports. According to the UN, the pandemic has disproportionately affected low-wage workers and is likely to push an estimated 34.3 million persons into extreme poverty globally. Key sectors such as tourism are highly susceptible to external shocks, and the drastic drop in international travel and tourism has put Caribbean SMEs at high risk, rendering thousands jobless in our tourism-dependent economies. In view of this reality, and to mitigate the impact of COVID on the region's SMEs, Caribbean Export has taken the initiative to revisit its program to ensure the programs continue relevance to the private sector. In our approach, the agency will continue to work closely and rely upon the guidance of its board of directors and the CARIFORUM Directorate in order to ensure the effective execution of our mandate. In addition, the agency will continue to deepen its close relationship with the CARIFORUM ambassadors in Brussels and the European Union. Moreover, Caribbean Export is cognizant of the great importance of cooperation with our international development partners in Africa and the Pacific. Together, we can forge greater partnerships with a view to mutually supporting our respective development agenda. As the regional focal point for private sector development for the ACP in the Caribbean, the agency will therefore continue to collaborate with the other focal points to encourage dialogue and share best practices. Finally, Caribbean Export recognizes that public-private dialogue is a key component of the development process and will continue to endeavor to foster a supportive environment. Caribbean Export, together with the CARIFORUM Directorate and collaboration with the CARIFORUM ambassadors in Brussels, remain committed to regional private sector development during this crisis. Let us work together to support private sector development in the ACP states and truly leverage opportunities that redound to the benefit of all regions. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Bradshaw. We actually had, it's interesting, we actually had over 450 people registered for this webinar from, I think, 37 countries the last time I counted. And please do also let me acknowledge those that have joined from the St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Unfortunately, this platform doesn't include the country in the country listing. So please, we are aware of that, and obviously, unfortunately, it's a system issue with GoToWebinar. But we do acknowledge, obviously, your presence and being part of this important discussion. So without further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Percival Murray, Director General for the CARIFORUM Directorate, to give his opening remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to say welcome to all the participants at this very important webinar. For me, this is a special occasion in which we recognize the importance of MSMEs to the Caribbean region. We understand the challenges that they face under normal circumstances, much less in a COVID environment. And we try to see how, as a region, we can provide the kind of support that ought to be provided to that particular important sector. The importance of the micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises in the economies and social structure of CARIFORUM states should not be underestimated. MSMEs represent 95% of businesses in Latin America and the Caribbean, and 67% of employment, according to data published by the OECD. For the Caribbean itself, these figures are slightly different. 92% of the formal business enterprises in the Caribbean are MSMEs, and 60% of private sector employment in the region is created by that particular sector. This contribution to the contribution through the informal sector is not included in those figures. So you could see the relative importance of that sector if you were to add the contribution of the informal sector to those figures that I have just quoted. Notwithstanding their prominence, but because of their small size and high failure rate in certain instances, they account for less than 1/3 of GDP across Latin America and the Caribbean. But in the specific case of the Caribbean, they contribute up to 50% of the GDP across CARIFORUM. Given their ownership structure and the areas of operation, MSMEs in CARIFORUM contribute significantly to employment creation, reducing poverty and income inequalities, and have an important role to play in empowering women, youths, and rural communities. Because of their contribution to employment, GDP, and their role in income generation, the Caribbean MSME sector has an extremely important role to play in the medium and long-term development of CARIFORUM states and the CARIFORUM region. The region cannot achieve sustainable and inclusive economic growth and development without the contribution of MSMEs. In fact, the resilience of CARIFORUM economies depends heavily on the resilience of its MSMEs. Herein lies the challenge of CARIFORUM states. MSMEs are generally small, vulnerable, and do not benefit from economies of scale. Challenges which they face are numerous and varied, and that is indicative of the kind of challenge that is faced by CARIFORUM states to achieve sustainable growth and development. The COVID-19 pandemic has and continues to expose the vulnerability of the sector in CARIFORUM. As we've been told, Caribbean Export recently conducted a survey to discover the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on CARIFORUM states. Major findings of that survey may be summarized as follows. The main business areas most affected by the pandemic include cash flow, sales, operations, future contracts and orders, staffing, and supply chain disruption. Business needs identified include grant funding in the short, medium, and long term, market intelligence, other financing options, technical assistance, and training. The information provided has exposed the inherent and built-in MSME vulnerabilities. This is reflected in the future challenges firms will have to face in recovering from the pandemic. These challenges will include recovering financially from the pandemic, dealing with the question of access to existing and new export markets, retaining or regaining customers lost during the shutdown, and adjusting to what will in fact become the new norm. I will now provide a summary of how CARIFORUM, through Caribbean Export, intends to assist CARIFORUM MSMEs to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. With respect to access to financing, there is most likely to be a retooling of the direct assistance grant, which provides direct funds to firms. The amount allocated to that scheme will be increased by euro 3.5 million and may be granted on a non-reimbursable basis given the COVID-19. Actively working with the European Union to ensure that the funds available for direct grant is increased by about 3.5 million euros. And we are speaking about the conditions under which those funds will be provided. And by that I mean the non-reimbursable nature. The Caribbean Export will also actively promote the engagement of angel investors to try to provide additional equity financing to ease the burden of some of the SMEs. Caribbean Export will work on export development, moving towards online training programs. They will continue the COVID-related webinars, which have already commenced, some of which have already been delivered. The e-commerce webinar series will be launched, will continue. I understand that 3 sessions have already been held. They will attempt to assist in transitioning to e-learning through major training programs, which will include PONET, so Global, Business of Music, and other similar programs. They will provide platforms for market intelligence. They will host webinars in conjunction with EU IPO on protecting matters related to intellectual property. On export promotion, clearly we will have to move towards virtual trade shows. We will do follow-up virtual trade missions as a follow-up to the business forum held in September 2019 in Germany. The agency will continue to work with regional chambers and other stakeholders to promote efficient business practices to assist in jump-starting the recovery and to ensure business continuity. On investment promotion, the agencies will continue to supplement and build capacity of the region's investment promotion organizations in attempting to attract the kind of investments that are required in the region. And of course, they will try to promote investment through digital means, given the fact that we cannot as yet travel. In the area of services, I understand and I'm advised that Caribbean Export will undertake interventions virtually. We'll continue to address capacity development, focusing on ensuring online presence, reinsertion into markets, marketing through virtual business-to-business contacts, and marketing and promotion. In that regard, a number of areas of focus will receive attention from the agency. The agency will focus on programs such as Services Go Global. It will continue execution of the online business of music. It will, in the area of fashion, develop curricula for fashion, increase the number of designers in its online fashion showroom, and provide support for the execution of our virtual fashion trade show. We'll also attempt to provide support in animation, gaming, and film. It will establish and further develop its services registry. It will promote ICT to address demands of the response to the COVID-19 pandemic. This represents part of CARIFORUM's regional response to the COVID-19 pandemic. This part of the regional response focuses on the private sector, given its role in the region's economic recovery, and is targeted specifically at MSMEs, given the relative importance of the sector in the regional economy. Colleagues, I believe that this webinar and the discussion amongst between the private sector as well as business support organizations and international agencies providing support to the regional private sector is well timed. It will cause us to ask questions as to where we are, where we are going to go to, and how we can get where we want to go. The webinar is timely, and I must congratulate Caribbean Export on its mountain of this particular webinar. I have to congratulate the OACPS as well in having done a similar exercise this morning and in encouraging us at the regional level to undertake this particular exercise. There is no doubt in my mind that the outcome of this webinar will assist in charting the path which the region has to take in terms of private sector development, building resilience in the private sector, and in attempting to regain the ground that would have been lost by the region as a consequence of this COVID-19 pandemic. It is in that context that I really want to wish this webinar tremendous success. Thank you, colleagues.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. Murray. Really appreciate your kind words and obviously taking the time out to join us today as well. As you know, we have got 2 sessions that will be coming up today. These will be moderated by Mr. Escipion Oliveira, our Deputy Executive Director at Caribbean Export. And I will actually hand over to him, and he will moderate both of the sessions that will be taking place currently and introduce the respective speakers for those sessions. So I'm going to hand over to Mr. Oliveira.
Thank you very much, Joel, and I really appreciated the introductions by my colleagues and the inspiring words by the Ambassador of Jamaica in Brussels and by our Director General of CARIFORUM. We have a very interesting discussion this afternoon. We have the privilege of having 4 dynamic and professional ladies from the region. It is very inspiring to be able to be well represented by ladies in the region. So I think that we took the best of the best, and it happens to be ladies, which is quite often in the region. So our first session, we will talk about the state of play of micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, and how public and private sector and international organizations or regional organizations, in this case, the Caribbean Development Bank and the Association of Dominican Exporters, what are they doing? How are they helping our private sector to navigate through this crisis? Sorry, and the Chamber of Commerce of Dominica, sorry, for the first session. So I would like to start first with my friend, Ms. Lisa Fabian. She's the chairperson of the Caribbean Network of Chambers of Commerce, CARICHAM, and she's also the executive director of Dominica. We were very privileged to have her message be delivered to the ACP on behalf of the private sector of the region today during the event that the Ambassador of Jamaica was mentioning. In fact, for those that don't know, this event is part of a whole ACP day in which the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States are exchanging their best practices. So this event is part of this, and several of the speakers today have participated in that. So Lisra, without further ado, please share your wealth of knowledge with the group. And we're really desirous to hearing your presentation and then engaging a debate with our distinguished participants.
Thank you so very much, SCPN, for this introduction. And I'm really pleased to be representing our private sector, regional private sector, and CARICHAM, which is a network of Caribbean Chambers of Commerce. Before I begin, I just want to say a happy MSME Day, which is supposed to be tomorrow, but a happy MSME Day to all MSMEs who are on this call and those who will even see this subsequently. I will move to share my screen as well. Okay. Joellen, could you prompt me for the sharing screen so I could get it on?
Your screen is actually being shared currently. Oh, well, it was.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. So if you want to put your presentation in.
I just checked it. Great, thank you so very much. Great, so I just want to share briefly that CARICHAM is a network of 21 chambers, 21 national chambers of commerce across the region, and we represent over 90,000 businesses. We are focused on 4 main pillars, but also a few objectives, which includes to find non-traditional solutions to economic growth, to collaborate with each other for this, to also ensure that we can sustain business-to-business exchanges and to advocate on regional and international levels. And we're really delighted to have Caribbean Export as a partner that we could advocate on behalf of our MSMEs so that we could improve how our MSMEs are able to function in the region. I want to share that critically, approximately 80% of all tourism businesses are MSMEs, and they serve as a major source of employment for women, youth, and rural communities. And this could be seen from the OACPS COVID report. And then we also conducted a survey in Dominica, but also numerous surveys were conducted across the region. I want to highlight that approximately 31% of employees were laid off due to COVID-19. And we saw that approximately 35.6% of all businesses have lost revenue, or their revenue has reduced by 35.6% due to COVID-19. The OACPS also conducted a survey, and just to highlight briefly the impact on supply of input, we saw a 46% reduction or interruption in the supply of raw material. I also want to highlight below on the impacts of sales that we saw a 59% reduction in demand. To highlight the other parts of this, there's been an impact on trade logistics. We saw 31% disruption or interruption in sea and transport services, and also a 38% disruption in the air transport services. But there's also been an impact on production for our MSMEs. There's been reduction in volumes, and some have also, very few saw an increase in volumes, but most MSMEs saw a reduction in volumes and productivity. And finally, for this statistics, there's been an impact on finance as well. We can even see it in our individual countries, that there's a reduction in the working capital that's available and the ability of our MSMEs to make their loan payments. But also on labor, as mentioned, even from the DIC email, there was a reduction in, well, redundancies of employees, layoffs, but also reduction in the hours of the employees of these businesses. So we could see that the results are approximately the same for even national surveys versus regional and sub-regional surveys. I'd want to highlight the Caribbean MSME state of play. And we'll be looking at MSME challenges, the priorities of our MSMEs, the Caribbean MSMEs and private sector resilience, what would be necessary for helping our MSMEs, also looking at support measures to strengthen the sector, and then some opportunities for for anyone on this call who would be looking to support our MSMEs in improving how they're able to function even in a post-COVID environment. So I would look at the MSME challenges. Previously, I mentioned the impact on employment and revenues, but we could see that there's a great impact on demand. I mean, many of our businesses were closed, their doors were closed, and a lot of persons were not spending as much as they would have before COVID-19. So we saw a great impact on the demand and the supply ability of our MSMEs. As a result of this, the cash flow has been significantly constrained because where there's limited demand and ability to supply, then limited revenue would be gained by the businesses. There's been a significant disruption in the supply chains, where some businesses have been closed that have affected other businesses who rely on them for their input in order to produce and supply to their customers. We saw a reduction in capacity and human resource. So where some persons would just not be, well, they would not be able to go outside, or they would not be able to come to work. Some businesses had to lay off employees, unfortunately, due to the limited revenue that they had. And this has significantly affected the capacity and human resource of all businesses. And finally, looking at disruption in logistics and high costs of transportation, we have experienced that across the region. But we want to pay attention now to some of the priorities of our MSMEs. Access to affordable capital has always been one of the greatest needs of our businesses across the Caribbean region. And I may say it's the same across the ACP countries. Not just access to capital, but access to affordable capital. And also ensuring that our businesses, in a number of areas, one, they would have the financial literacy in order to make the necessary decisions, because we've seen in some of our countries that due to inadequate records, some of our businesses are unable to access the financing. I think even through Caribbean exports, the DAX program and other financing programs that were available, some businesses could not access this because they did not meet the minimum requirement that was expected. So access to affordable capital is very important, and where possible, grant financing. I was very pleased to hear Ambassador Murray spoke about the financing that may be available. It's being worked upon, but we do hope that this can really support our MSMEs across the region. Then we look at capacity building. It's really important that all our businesses are able to have the necessary skills, develop the skills, but also the know-how, technical know-how, in order to get their businesses through this time. And then growth and job creation. Businesses, they exist in order to be able to grow, to be able to provide job opportunities for others across our region. And this is really critical at this time, as we saw before, that persons had to be laid off due to COVID-19. So being able to create jobs, keep the family employed, keep food on the table, that's really important for our MSMEs. We look now at our Caribbean MSME and private sector resilience, some of the key things that are necessary in ensuring that our businesses can be more resilient. We look at innovative policies and market-based approaches. The policies that we take right now, it can't be the same as always. The world is changing, and so would our policies need to change in terms of being innovative in how we approach them, using technology, but also ensuring that it's market-driven, it meets the needs of the businesses that we do want to serve. Also ensuring that we optimize the use of technology and digitize our businesses. We had a discussion 2 days ago, and we spoke about the need for businesses to be digitized, but it was said by the tech expert that it's not just going online and having an online presence, but thinking digitally. That means integrating technology and digitization in every aspect of the business. First, how do we look at how can we just serve our customers through technology, with technology, whether it's even outsourcing the delivery part of the business, but using technology in order to get that business forward. Importantly, especially as we are positioned in the Caribbean region and we are prone to disasters, it's important that we look at business continuity and disaster risk reduction, where as much as possible, without a business continuity plan or disaster risk reduction plan, it's like not having that plan almost makes that business doomed to fail. In doing presentations on disaster risk reduction, we always say that a disaster risk reduction plan is like having a second parachute. How many of us would want to go on an airplane and jump from the plane and have that one parachute and realize, oops, it's not working anymore. What do? Do I fall to my death? It's important to have that second parachute so that we can survive disasters or risks that our businesses may be faced with. It's important to also invest in that human resource, ensuring that our entire team would be able to understand what's necessary to carry that business forward. Looking at two more aspects: enhance local cohesion, where our MSMEs are able to interface with other critical stakeholders in the country. So not just MSMEs and the government, but MSMEs and the support organizations, academia, many different aspects of our countries that will support our MSMEs in moving forward. And then seeing how we can enhance regional collaboration, integration, and trade. By ourselves, by a single MSME business looking at how they can improve on resilience, it can be done alone. And as a region, we can't do it as individual countries. So it's really important to ensure that there's cohesion, collaboration, and proper integration. That means free movement of people, capital, resources across the region and across our ACP in order for us to really enhance the resilience of our businesses. Then we look at measures to support and strengthen the sector. What has been done thus far? We've seen that there's been advocacy on many areas. I think each chamber, and I think other support organizations as well, have really rallied with our members to understand how they have been affected and have a presence with the government to advocate on their behalf, whether it's looking at incentives to support the sector, or whether it's not even financial, but just other measures that can be used to support our businesses. We have been advocating on that level. Looking at increased access to finance. A number of, we've seen through our central banks and our development banks that funding have been made available to support our MSME sector. What has to happen is ensuring that they can really access these in a quick space of time so that they can use it to support them in this time. Looking at other fiscal incentives, reduction of taxes, and other measures that could really help our businesses move forward to put them in a position that they would not have been before is extremely important. We saw capacity building and training. I will highlight a few of these subsequently. And then looking at the digital platform and services. Even our chamber, we've looked at how can our businesses use these platforms to sell their goods and services. Where the doors would have been closed, they would still be able to at least get revenue. We saw before in the MSME Challenges, the doors would have been closed, so they could not have gotten revenue. But having these digital platforms and services can help to at least gain some revenue to help with the sustainability of the businesses. And then ultimately business development support, which many of our business support organizations have been doing and other organizations. But I also want to make a call to action for the opportunities pre and post COVID-19. It was mentioned of angel investors previously, which is extremely important for our region, and also other equity investors and venture capitalists to invest in the businesses. But what also needs to happen is that our businesses can't retain full rights to the business if we have a venture capitalist coming in. So we would have to look at non-traditional solutions to accessing financing to move our businesses forward. Then looking at mentorship and support services. There could be experts on this call here who would be really delighted to support our businesses, share your technical know-how that can really propel them forward. We invite you to come forth and share your experience, your willingness to support these businesses. Looking at how we can strengthen the trade linkages in our region. So where we've depended on other countries to support our food security, it's important to strengthen these trade linkages within the region, within the ACP countries as well, to ensure that we can have enhanced circulation of funds within our territories. And then finally, collaboration with businesses to repurpose. We had, ACPNU was part of this webinar with the Haiti Chamber where we looked at repurposing businesses, looking at how we could use our existing structures to look at new opportunities and change a bit of our model to to be able to introduce new goods and services to our community, that would be extremely important. And I just want to share with you a few highlights of some of the events that we've held. CARIFORUM started a regional growth series where we looked at supporting our businesses in preparing for the hurricane season in light of the impact of COVID-19. These presentations are available even via our LinkedIn page, so we would share the LinkedIn information subsequently, but if you're interested, you can tune into this. We have also looked at remote work and maintaining a competitive edge for businesses, looking at everything that's happening now and how we can position our businesses to be more competitive is extremely useful. I also want to highlight Caribbean Exports Talking Exports webinar, where a number of areas have been looked at, from developing a viable e-commerce strategy and e-commerce solutions to logistics and shipping, tips for leaders in turbulent times, the same business continuity, which is really important, and supply chain management during COVID-19. We want to encourage you that we all have a role to play in advancing our businesses, strengthening our businesses, though we saw all the challenges that we are faced with. We want you to do what you can to make our MSMEs succeed, whether it's through your information, through your networks, through your financing. All of us can do something to make our businesses succeed. So contact your local chamber or BSO today, and you could reach us at carichamnetwork@gmail.com or get to us via LinkedIn, company/Caricham. So thank you very much. Escipion, back over to you.
Thank you very much, Lisa, for this very inspiring presentation. For the persons following the seminar, don't forget to ask questions. We'll be reading out loud. I would like now to pass the center stage to Ms. Lisa Harding. She's the coordinator of the Macro, Small, and Medium-Sized Unit of the Caribbean Development Bank. The Caribbean Development Bank is a very important regional institution that has been supporting our private sector for the longest time, and with which Caribbean Export has had the privilege to work with. Ms. Harding, please, the floor is yours. Ms. Harding.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's a pleasure to be here on behalf of the management of CDB. Thank you very much to Caribbean Export for inviting us to present. I just want to confirmation, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, excellent. Sorry, just give me 1 second, please. Sorry, I'm seeing you, but I'm not able to see my screen. Joellen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
But I can't.
Over page with the state of play for SMEs and measures adopted to safeguard and strengthen the sector. I think
okay, just 1 second. Sorry, just give me 1 second. I'm not able to, I can't see my screen now for some reason. Help.
Hi there, Lisa. It could be that your view on your control panel may well have changed. So if you go to the top of the panel where you can see your view, you should be able to see some options as to how to set up your screen. You're working with one monitor or two?
One.
Okay. And you can
okay, I think that's it.
Yeah, have you got
okay,
it?
Excellent. Can you see it? Excellent.
Yes, we can.
Okay.
We can see you.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Okay, thank you. So a lot of what I had to say today really reflects what Lizra would have mentioned in terms of the presentation. As many of you would be aware, MSMEs do account for approximately 85% of the enterprises within our MSMEs. And as was referenced in the opening remarks, are all, really are the backbone of the regional private sector, accounting for some 60% of GDP. So, I mean, again, just to say that, of course, this particular webinar is indeed very timely, and, the importance of the sector cannot really be overstated. In terms of the topic, I was asked to present today on, the current state of play and what we at the CDB feel are doing to support the sector. So I'll just start by spending a few minutes. I mean, most of these barriers are well known to most of those persons who are represented here on the panel and, of course, the audience. So just to say, in terms of barriers facing MSMEs, we know that access to finance continues to be a binding constraint. This has been mentioned, many times over. And not only is it in terms of access, but again, in terms of the high cost of finance, the limited financial options in the financial sector, which tend to is predominated by debt financing, high collateral requirements for MSMEs. We do also have information asymmetries where there are they're not credit bureaus in every jurisdiction. And of course, there's also anecdotal and some empirical evidence to suggest that there are also disparities in access to finance by women-owned enterprises. Of course, finance is just one of the constraints, and we also recognize that business skills and the business acumen, the enabling environment, and the business development support framework has also been a serious constraint faced by MSMEs before and after COVID. And of course, we know that the discussion here today is centering around COVID. What happened in COVID and the impact of MSMEs? Well, we all know that in March this year, stay-at-home orders were issued and only non-essential businesses were closed. The borders of our border member countries were also closed, and there were guidelines for social distancing protocols established. What does that and how does that impact on our MSMEs? Again, as referenced in the opening remarks, CDB in collaboration with Caribbean Export undertook a survey of MSMEs and business support organizations in the region to get a sense directly from them as to how they have been impacted and how that information can inform our programming. Some of this was discussed in the remarks earlier, but just I will focus on, I think, well, the key issues here and also some of the other findings that were not already highlighted. Obviously, cash flow is a major issue and the actual impact on sales. Some 79% of the respondents indicated that their cash flow was impacted and 73% of sales. 40% of those in the survey, and I must say that the survey was conducted to 520 MSMEs, also indicated that staffing was negatively impacted, with nearly 50% of all firms had their physical locations closed, with 47% having to temporarily cease operations altogether. I mean, that is really, significant, and it just speaks to the magnitude of the crisis, really. What is important as well is that 88% of the MSMEs surveyed indicated that they did not have contingency plans in place. Further to that, the survey respondents indicated that there was a significant need for grant funding, some over 75%, and 98% of those indicated that they would request support in the form of technical assistance, market research, and capacity building. So based on that, CDB, as well as you mentioned, there were other surveys conducted by the OACPS, Compete Caribbean also facilitated surveys. So that we've been able to capture quite a lot of information to inform, our response. CDB's response basically focused on two main areas, access to finance and capacity building and support. it would be remiss of me not to mention that although the focus this afternoon is on MSMEs, but to not mention the emergency loans which CDB provided and approved. Some 67 million was approved to 7 Caribbean countries to counter the COVID crisis. Now, why this is important is that though not all of this funding going directly to the MSME sector, we know that you have to shore up the economy for the MSMEs to benefit in the long term. So these resources, the emergency loans, were used to provide governments in the region with fiscal space so that they would not have to divert resources from health and social areas to be, in terms of to shore up the economy. So of course, this is very, very important because again, if you were not able to have well persons, then that would have an even greater impact on the actual MSME sector of itself. So I think that this is a very good idea in terms of, as I said, to lead the foundation in terms of support for economic sustainability. We've also been embarking on a number of new interventions to, as I mentioned before, increase access to finance for the sector. We have, there's an IDB global loan for the OACPS countries, which is currently under appraisal. And this includes not only, again, MSMEs, it includes social safety safeguards in terms of health, and also there's a component focused on, I believe it is a financial sector component. So this particular aspect of the global loan focuses on the sectors that we have felt have been most severely impacted, including tourism and hotels, retail and services, logistics and agriculture. And again, what this is aiming to do is to provide, as mentioned before, and address the cash flow constraints that have been severely compounded as a result of COVID. By providing these resources through financial intermediaries to allow SMEs to quickly be able to pivot, retool, continue to pay staff, and a lot of the needs being for working capital. And it would also assist in basically improving the overall SME portfolios of the financial institutions themselves as well. Linked to that particular initiative, the bank has also been involved in a number of what I would say kind of strategic operational reforms. As we mentioned, it is important for us ourselves as a developmental institution to also pivot and to also be responsive. And in light of the crisis, we are also looking at variations in the terms and conditions of our lines of credit to allow financing of working capital. This was not the case in the past. Our lines of credit working capital was only facilitated for startup businesses, but we recognize that this is again an important aspect of the improved survival of MSMEs, and therefore this is what we are going to our board shortly with in terms of to get approval. So this is kind of, as I said, operational pivoting that the bank is also undertaking to be more responsive to the sector at this point in time. A very, very interesting intervention that we have also done, for some of you who may not be aware, CDB does have a Cultural and Creative Industries Innovation Fund, which provides capacity building support to creative entrepreneurs in 4 subsectors: fashion, film, animation and gaming, festivals and carnivals, and music. And we have also found, and I think it's widely known, that the impact of COVID has more or less decimated the creative industry sector, primarily because our creatives have generally tended to be those that, the businesses were physical in nature. A lot of it was based on contact and gathering. And therefore, with the advent of the social distance protocols, that particular subsector has not been able to, were really severely hit. We also had this situation where, a number of festivals and carnivals were canceled for 2020, you know, and some even in 2021, still being tentative up to now. So what the SIF did very, very quickly was to repurpose, or I should say reallocate some of its budgetary resources to provide emergency relief grants for those creatives involved in the music and festival subsectors. And we were able to do this very, very quickly with the support of the SIF steering committee. And we are now at the process of evaluating, and in fact, the first round of evaluations have been completed, and we should be in a position to start the actual disbursements of the grants very, very soon. So I think that this was, and again, this was not new funding, but it was a recognition that, again, to be timely and responsive, we were also able to pivot in this regard. As I mentioned, that is in terms of access to finance. We have also been, you know, taking a very measured and guided view in terms of what is required as a response with regard to capacity building. And there have been a number of new interventions which we have also programmed. The first of this, and again, Caribbean Export is on the line, and I hope that I'm not telling tales out of school, and I have to make a disclaimer that the project is not yet approved, but we are at an advanced stage in terms of appraisal. And this is a COVID-19 MSME response program in partnership with Caribbean Export. The components of the project include the development of a joint grant facility modeled after the DAGS program. You heard before as well, but the beauty of this is that it will not be a reimbursable grant given the cash flow constraints and the working capital limitations that MSMEs would have at this time. And it also incorporates online training and of course the communications component of the program. But we believe that this can go a long way in supporting much needed technical assistance and capacity building reforms for MSMEs in the region. And we're working quite very hard to expedite this particular approval so we can get the funding to the sector. Again, partnerships, and you would see this is a common theme, I believe, in the MSME approach at the CDB. We have also recently finalized a partnership agreement with the OAS, where we looked at our joint areas of support for MSMEs and identified a few areas that we felt we can work in a collaborative basis to support. And 3 main areas were identified. And of course, e-commerce is at the top of the chart, training and capacity building and business climate reforms. Now, e-commerce, we know, has been one of those, you know, really hard issues to tackle over many, many years. But we believe that we may be, you know, poised now, and especially because, in fact, you talk about opportunities with COVID, because there's been so much of more of a digital and using the technology adaptation over the last few months, with a number of even financial institutions having to launch new products, that maybe now is the time that we can definitely, you know, advance this particular constraint that many MSMEs face in terms of actually able to have and process payments on an online platform. CDB is also a partner in the Compete Caribbean program. And I must say, you know, a lot of the programming for Compete for MSME development, it was still relevant pre-COVID as it is today, because a lot of the interventions have focused on the business climate reforms, which, as I said, are still relevant, very much so. Maybe it's just a case of even being more relevant, or we would like to have them completed with haste. But one, I guess, very interesting and innovative project that has been recently launched is that of a technology extension services project, and where we have adapted it to respond to pivot is that Compete has removed the requirement for counterpart financing, again, which is usually their model in terms of support. So this particular program would provide or assist MSMEs with the consultancy services to help them access and identify technologies that can make them more resilient and to improve their competitiveness. And of course, as I mentioned before, Compete has a range of programs as well in terms of public, business climate reforms. And what would be interesting for the MSME sector would be that, again, based on digitization of the public sector, because remember, the public sector is the enabler for business in the region. So if, again, in supporting the digitization of the public sector, we're hoping that MSME support will be more streamlined, first processes will be faster, more efficient, more lean, and more nimble. Like CARICHAM, we have also undertaken a series of, or a number of what we call our MSME Town Hall series, where we also felt it was important to facilitate some direct engagement with our SME sector. And we had 3 programs, digital dialogues, one which focused on pivoting your business. There was also another one in the series which looked at money management for MSMEs and managing your financial relationship with your financial institution, which we also thought was very, very, very important, because we know that in times of crisis like COVID and where persons are very uncertain, sometimes a lot of our MSMEs don't know how to engage with the financial institution and how to know what their options are for restructuring. We know that the FIs offered various moratoriums and so on, but again, some persons may not have been aware of all of the options. And one of the takeaways from that particular series was that you really just don't want to bury your head in the sand and hide from your financial institution. So we thought that that was a very good session as well. And we also had a session which spoke about cost-effective marketing and client engagement, again, using the technology. And I would just want to say, and this is last but by no means least, this is not a new program, but an ongoing program of CDB, which is our CTCS program. It's just the bank's flagship program that provides direct technical assistance to MSMEs. We also provide support for institutional strengthening of BSOs, and we also are rolling out a number of knowledge products. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much, Lisa, for that wonderful presentation. I have some questions I will read, so maybe we can.
I'm sorry. Sorry, if you could just, I flipped. Something disappeared. Sorry?
Yes, I think we're pressed on time.
Okay, no, that's fine. Thank you.
Yes. We have some questions from the audience. The one is from Derek Omar from CrossQ. He's asked to Lisa, and Lisa, I don't know which one of you may respond. As we focus through digitalization, how can we at the regional level help to bridge the economic disparity throughout the region, given the different levels of impact at each country? So how can we help bridge the economic disparity within the region?
I think, first of all, we'll have to know what the exact state of play in each country is, what exactly is happening at that time. I think we have to take stock of what's happening, our businesses. We have to take stock of what resources we have. We have to also take stock of what the competitive advantage of each island is and where we need the support. And then I think we are best able to match it within the region. I also think our regional organizations have a key role to play in making this happen. So Mr. Derek Omar from CROSCU, I think CROSCU would have a really important role to play in ensuring that this can take place. But first we need to understand what's there, what's available, what the competitive advantages are, take stock of all of this and see how best we can match demand and supply, shortages with advantages.
Thank you, Lisa. To Lisa, how do you see the cooperation of CDB with the standards and quality, with quality infrastructure in the region? Like Lisa just mentioned, it's very important. I wanted to know the experience of the CDB promoting this infrastructure in the region. It's a response to a question from Mr. Jose Trejo. Lisa, can you hear me? Hello? I think we lost Lisa Harding. Well, while we wait to Lisa to come back, maybe Lisa, a question from Valerie de Oliveira. When you were mentioning in your presentation the change of model, can you talk a little bit more about that? How do you see this change of model in the region?
Change of model? Which
yes.
Model?
Yeah, when you in your presentation, you were talking about a change of mindset in the region. So can you, Valerie wanted you to explain, to talk a little bit more about that.
Okay, I'm not sure if it related directly with the digitization of the business to ensure that even in our thinking, we have awesome ideas within the region, and we have a lot of resources. I think in being able to strengthen our capacity base, our skills, and even in changing the mindset, looking at our educational sector and how we can make the changes that we need so that we don't train people for jobs that do not exist, but we actually train persons and start from the schools right now so that by the time they also get to the working world to create their businesses, that they're able to do so at an advanced level. Because we do see other regions in the world advancing in these areas, and I think it would have to do with their educational sector and also partly their mindset as well, in being able to take advantages of this. So where possible that the ACP can support in helping us to enhance our educational sector to meet the current demand and even the trends of the world where it's heading, that would be really appreciated for the Caribbean, Africa, and the Pacific.
Thanks, Lisa.
Hi,
Lisa, yes, the question to you is mainly regarding quality infrastructure. How is CDB is working, promoting the quality infrastructure in the region, and especially concerning certification of things like ISO 9001, and how do you see it, the work being carried out by CDB, and how do you see it, this promotion of quality infrastructure?
Okay, thanks for your question. So yes, the bank has been quite actively involved in this particular area through our regional cooperation and integration team. Indeed, they have done quite a lot of work with CROSCU in this regard, and in terms of providing, strengthening some of the laboratories across the region, etc. So with the new standby facility, I believe that this work would continue. That has been recently launched, I think in March this year.
Thank you very much, Lisa. I also have a question for you, Lisa, from Tony Regisford. He wants you to talk a little bit about the protection and use of intellectual property by our artists, especially given that nowadays we are losing in concerts, so we are depending a lot of other sources of income. So intellectual property, and how do you see it, how we can better protect it and use it as an asset? Lisa Harding?
Yes. Yes. Okay, thanks again. Excellent question. Again, I mentioned that our Creative and Cultural Industries Innovation Fund, CIF, that this has been an area identified, in terms of not a weakness, but an area that definitely needs improved strengthening for the creative sector. And we have had SIF uses, dialogues and so on with the sector, and we have had dialogues in the past that focused on intellectual property. We're also in the process of developing toolkits which focus on IP and how to protect your IP in various subsectors. So that is definitely work that we have on the front burner and that we hope to be able to make available soon.
Thank you very much, Lisa. I won't be able to read all the questions. Others will be responded by written procedure, but I will ask a couple of more questions to our distinguished panelists. Lisa, people are asking on how to get to know better the actions of CARICHAM and how can they get in contact with their own chambers. And they also want to know your ideas about it. This is from Shem Glasgow. How your ideas on how can we use this COVID crisis to reshape the interregional assistance and strategies to encourage sustainable development. How do you see, again, the role of CARICHAM in that reshaping of the region, and how can people approach or be members of CARICHAM?
Okay, great. Thank you for asking, and that's a very good question. CARICHAM is across 20 countries in the region, so the entire CARIFORUM, each chamber within this region is part of CARICHAM. So in terms of contacting your local chamber of commerce, I believe that they would be visible in your country, but if not, I did share our LinkedIn page. I have received a few requests thus far, so it's CARICHAM, it's LinkedIn/company CARICHAM. So we would be able to share more information. If you reach out to us via this platform, we can share with you directly the contact of the local chamber. Also, in terms of understanding CARICHAM's, what we are focused on, well, we're focused on 4 main areas: on disaster risk reduction, ensuring that we can mitigate disaster risk. Also looking at trade promotion, trade facilitation, and transportation. Looking at how we can also share knowledge and best practice across our region. And finally, membership value and advocacy, because membership value is at the heart of what we do. If as a chamber we don't serve our members adequately, then that's a challenge, and we're endeavoring to do that. But it was also asked of how we support in that area. Well, I would say, for one, since CARICHAM was formed, we've been able to learn more about the Caribbean. We've also been able to help each other where we see that we lack expertise or even information on. So best practices that are shared through all the chambers, we learn from each other, even in how we manage the COVID crisis, how we advocate with our local partners. What we saw happen maybe in Barbados, if they did something specific like the arrangement of the supermarkets, we could evaluate that and see, okay, based on this, looking at our context, how can we learn from this and implement something not the exact same way, but something that could best serve our countries. And I think that's an important model across the region. We can't do it alone, and we can't be like working in silos, because we may be duplicating efforts, we may not be using the best resources that we have, but where we can work together, collaborate, where we see manufacturers working together. Even now we're working on a challenge that we're faced within the region, chambers with manufacturers and other organizations. This is how we see that we can enhance what we do within the region, working together, seeing what the challenges are, and pulling in the support from the different organizations. And I must say that Caribbean Export has been a partner for us on this, and together we've been even advocating through the ACP and trying to ensure how we represent the region, but also bring greater opportunities here. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. One last question for Lisa, and then I'll give each one of you 1 minute to wrap up and give words to the audience. So it's a question mixed for several people between Isolina Boto and also Lucia Lewis and Valeria Oliveira. Please talk a little bit about investment readiness in the region, Lisa. How do you see the role of commercial banks working to support micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises? And can you touch a little bit about the insurance options for both crop and livestock farming in the region, which is seen by Mrs. Lucila Lewis as a major concern for small farmers? So it's a lot of different questions in one. Role of the private commercial banks. How can we better give, I would say, financial services to farmers and livestock owners, especially concerning insurance and the investment readiness of the region? A tough one, Lisa.
Okay, yes, thank you. Very excellent question. In terms of the investment readiness, I mean, as I would have shared in the presentation, and we didn't have time to go through too much detail, but we believe that there is still a risk. The traditional banking sector remains risk averse to lending to the sector. But we recognize, I mean, there have been some movement in that regard, however. So I think that we are seeing some movement. But what I think is important is that we as developmental partners can see how we can then help to mitigate that risk and work with the commercial banks and indigenous banks across the region. So for example, the implementation of credit guarantee schemes, and then of course building capacity of the MSMEs on the other side is critical, because the reality is we need to make sure that the MSMEs are bankable and that they have the necessary infrastructure in place to be more credit worthy. And that includes, as I said, in terms of financial record keeping, Lizra mentioned about financial literacy and so on earlier. All of those are important aspects. So I think that the whole concept of a multi-pronged approach, yes, the commercial banks have a role to play, credit unions have a role to play, angel investors have a role to play. So we just need to kind of take, I think, as developmental partners, understand the various actors and try to see how we can provide more coordination and risk mitigation to basically foster, promote more access to finance by the sector. In terms of insurance, I think you mentioned about agriculture and so on. I know that there's CCRIF, and the bank has done some work in that regard, but I really would not be, I think is a little bit outside of my main area to speak in terms of some of the more recent developments, but there are parametric insurance products out there. And I think that that is what has been happening to help with that regard. After the hurricane season last year, however, and I know having been to the Bahamas, there's also a push to see how we can work with insurance companies to provide some more, maybe have to tailor insurance products for MSMEs though, because we recognize that that is an area that is severely lacking, with most MSMEs not being able to access affordable insurance cover in agriculture and fisheries in particular.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Lisa, can you wrap up maybe a message to the audience? 1 minute, please, because we're a bit running behind, but it's very interesting to have your final views.
Well, I am really thankful for the opportunity for CARIFORUM to be part of this very important conversation on the state of play of our MSMEs and measures that have been adopted to safeguard and strengthen the sector. Like I mentioned before, I think we all have a role to play in advancing our region. It can't be left up to someone else or just think that someone else can do, but each of us here can do something to improve our region. I encourage you to reach out to us at CARIFORUM, where we can see how best we can come up with solutions, see how we can connect you to members or even organizations to ensure that we can improve our region. And I also want to make a call for regional organizations who are here that we continue to work together. If we continue to do it separately, we will be duplicating resources and not really allocating the best resources to our MSME sector. So I just want to encourage everyone that we all have a role to play, and let's continue to work together, because we do want a Caribbean that's fully integrated in terms of free movement of people, capital, goods, and everything else. So thanks again for having me as part of this panel, and I wish a happy MSME Day to all MSMEs here.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Lisa, can you also give us your views in 1 minute? I'm sorry for the short time I'm giving you. But
no, that's fine. Thank you again. It was a pleasure being here. Happy MSME Day. Just in terms of parting thoughts, to not add to what Lizra said, but I think we need to focus on data as we want to, continue to support this very, very important sector, there is still significant data gaps that we need to work on so that we can inform our programs more, comprehensively and more, that are more relevant and responsive. And just to echo, regional integration, collaboration, strategic partnerships, that is the way I think that we can really work in terms of bolstering and supporting the MSME ecosystem in the region. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We give you a virtual applause to both of you, really, Lisa, for your kind contributions, and then we will pass to the next session immediately, because we're a little bit behind. So thank you very much, both of you. We have received many congratulations, written congratulations, both, for very excellent. So without further ado, we'll pass to the next session. It's session 2. We're going to talk about accelerate the redeployment of micro, small enterprises and industrial and commercial activities in the context of COVID-19. We have the honor to have 2 distinguished ladies from the region. First, Senator Dr. Lynette Holder, Chief Executive Officer of the Small Business Association of Barbados, who has been doing a wonderful job promoting COVID training. I was looking at your website and it was very interesting what you're doing. So Mrs. Holder has the advantage of being on both sides. He represents the constituency as a public servant, as a senator, and is also one of the main guiding lights in the private sector through SBA. And then we will have Mrs. Odile Minino Bogar, who is the Executive Vice President of the Association of Dominican Exporters. She's a lady that has really been there helping enterprises in the Dominican Republic very strongly. I had the privilege, in fact, to participate in the discussion organized by OACPS with the chief doctor of the Dominican government, that is the person that is guiding the measures of the Dominican government. He spent 3 hours talking with the private sector of Dominican Republic, responding to policy questions and being out there. So OACPS and SBA play a major role promoting public-private sector dialogue. So we'll start with Senator Holder. Please, Lynette, your presentation is, we're waiting very anxiously for it. We can't hear you, Lynette. There's a problem. Maybe on mute. I think you're still on mute.
Yes, she's now giving me the control to so do. Thank you, Cyprian, and a pleasant good afternoon, good morning, good night to all of you who are on this call. It is a pleasure to be here and to share a few thoughts with you. This very, very important topic. I wish to thank Caribbean Export Development Agency, first of all, for the invitation. And by way of a disclaimer, Cyprian, let me make the point that the Small Business Association has been hosting monthly webinars on this topic and very similar topics. So I'm going to apologize to some of the members on this call who may have seen some of our slides before and who may have heard some of this information before, because as you can appreciate, the COVID-19 pandemic has been maybe the worst of the crises that we have experienced, as they say, in the last 100 years in terms of its deleterious effect, not only on our economy, but also on our society. And therefore, all persons across many sectors have been engaged in the last few months and looking at these topics. How can we navigate our survival for the future? What are some of the strategies and solutions that we need to be engaged in? And I'm a little concerned that my short presentation may very well seem repetitive to some of those points that have gone before. But nonetheless, let's get right into it, because I'm aware that time is against us. Our task in this second segment is to really identify solutions, and that is my focus today, solutions. And let me begin, first of all, by a very popular quote, I'm sure that many of us on the call are aware of this saying, never let a good crisis go to waste. And whereas at this time, we may not necessarily want to be reminded of this gentleman, but the fact is, he did make this point following the Second World War, Winston Churchill, that whenever there's a crisis, we ought to look to see what are some of the solutions that ought to be considered. And it is against this backdrop that I'm sharing this afternoon on solutions not only from the small business perspective or the MSME, but solutions relative to government, solutions relative to business support organizations like the one that I lead. What is it that we have been doing, and what is it that we ought to do as we go forward to help our MSMEs now to survive, to redeploy their activities in this post-COVID-19 environment. So let me begin, first of all, with what I call the stimulus and support focus. Stimulus and support relative to the kind of solutions that government and business support organizations should consider. At the end of the day, it has been said by previous presenters that this environment, this post-COVID-19 environment, has really been one that has dealt a severe blow on our economy and our MSME sector. And so the fact is, our governments have had to play a significant role in being able to stimulate the economy, being able to provide support for the sector. And the first point then, for me at least, is that government's response in this environment has to be and ought to be focused on stimulus. Yes, there are maybe low-hanging fruits that can be considered relative to improving legislation. Lots of firms have had to consider the remote work environment, and many of our countries within CARIFORUM may not have had the kind of legislative framework to facilitate remote work, and that is something that our government across CARIFORUM, might I add, ought to consider. But the immediate response, I think, has been and ought to have been providing that stimulus support for the sector. And so this information demonstrates work done here in Barbados, where we've had a number of programs to help accelerate activities within the sector amongst MSMEs. We've looked at a myriad of funds. There's been a fund for those who earn the who pay VAT, value-added tax, here in Barbados, who are over that threshold. They've been funds for those that are registered as self-employed, those that may be in the informal sector, and there have been programs as well for those that are formal in the formal sector, but not necessarily at that VAT threshold. So we've sought to cater to all categories of MSMEs with a myriad of programs, and clearly the tourism sector, that for us, and I believe many in CARIFORUM, is actually the #1 foreign exchange earner. We've focused critically on the tourism sector and ensuring that we're able to shore up those firms, micro, small, medium, and even large, that are within this critical part of our economy. So the first response, they say, ought to have been government to provide that kind of stimulus for the MSME sector. And we've seen that here in Barbados. Now, let me turn my attention then to the area of support. Support has been and continues to be the key focus of business support organizations. This is why we're here. Yes, we lobby for an enabling business environment, but in addition to that, we focus on providing educational training opportunities, networking opportunities, business development support to help build the capacity of our members of MSMEs, even outside of our membership, in most cases, as is the reality of the association I represent. And so we have been focused in this COVID-19 environment on a number of activities designed to build capacity of our members. On the screen, you'll see our electronic commerce program, our national vocational qualifications program that focuses on e-commerce, electronic commerce, designed to really build the capacity of firms, to help them to understand and adopt mobile e-commerce applications, to also help them to manage e-commerce systems and be able to optimize their operations and so on. And particularly in this environment where we are moving to that digital platform, as was mentioned by other presenters, and I'll touch on briefly in my presentation, the issue of cybersecurity becomes an inherent risk for MSMEs. Yes, we have to migrate to the technological platform. This is a digital environment after all, but along with that comes the attendant challenge of cyber attacks, cyber terrorism, comes the attendant challenge of mitigating against the attacks that will come from those oftentimes who do it, you know, as we've seen in our research, sometimes to fund the hackers that are involved in phishing and you know, stealing people's identity and so on, and obviously the others that will do it for commercial gain. So cybersecurity then becomes an inherent issue for us. So our focus, therefore, on helping our MSMEs, helping our members to navigate this environment has been a critical point for us. In addition to that, business support organizations are being challenged now to look at marketing activities and marketing strategies that can help their constituents at this time to maintain the market presence, to grow market share, on occasion to be able to internationalize, coming out of this particular environment, this particular situation. And so understanding the importance of marketing support and developing marketing support then becomes a critical response, I think, for business support organizations. And so we've done something very similar here in the Small Business Association, following the restrictions being lifted. We would have launched our SOS marketing campaign, our support our small businesses program to help our client base to be able to still find markets at this time. We recognize, yes, that persons, consumers have a choice in where they make their purchases. And so we've been engaged now in a few weeks in this national campaign to help our consumers consider a small business to support, to patronize when they go about to make their purchases of goods and services and so on. So being able to help, as I said, provide the marketing support, the business development support, being able to build capacity of our firms at this time, and yes, lobbying for that enabling environment continues, I think, to be the kind of critical services that business support organizations play and will play in this COVID-19 environment. Now, a lot has been said about finance, and each presentation I make more often than not features this particular slide here. The fact is that all of the data indicates that financing and access to capital is still a major challenge for MSMEs. Let me hasten to add, I am not suggesting it is the only challenge, but it is a challenge. And so beyond the stimulus support that governments, the region over would have provided in this COVID-19 environment, we are still of the view that to be able to accelerate growth and to be able to sustain growth going forward, we need to look at a mix of financing solutions that incorporates seed capital, as well as equity financing to be able to help our firms to grow and to be sustainable going forward. And so we think that beyond the traditional loan funding, seed capital that's available, we need to look at the non-collateralized type of loans. Here in Barbados, we have something known as trust fund, where businesses, formal and informal, can access up to $5,000 US dollars in funding without it being secure. So no collateral, they can come, and it's a trust loan. It's an indication that we are trusting the individual to, go about monetizing that particular idea, looking to take that idea to fruition and turn that into some viable enterprise. So this, we think, will help especially those that are at the informal level and maybe at the micro level as well, to be able to access capital. But then we take it a step further. I think as the business grows in its overall business cycle, then the need for financing and the type of capital will change. So it is time, we think, that we look critically at the venture capital type of funding. We explore more aggressively the junior stock exchange, that we will be able to provide much needed equity for firms. Right here in Barbados, we have approximately 4.5 US, this is US, $4.5 billion in our financial institutions. And there must be a way to unlock some of that to be able to provide equity for our firms. And we think that, yes, the junior market is something that ought to be considered at this time, as well as the crowdfunding platforms and maybe even peer-to-peer lending. So these are some forms of financing that we think are needed at this time to help provide the capital to help those firms to grow and to develop. So the first part of my presentation looked at what I call stimulus and support from government's perspective, from the business support organization's perspective, but relative now to the firm, the micro, small, and medium enterprise, and being able to position the business for the future in a post-COVID-19 environment. I'm suggesting that strategy and synergy will be important. There must now be a focus on strategy. What is the right strategy for the future, and being able to create the kind of synergistic relationships that are needed to fuel growth. This is, I think, what the micro, small, and medium enterprise has to consider at this time: developing strategy and maximizing synergy. And the first point to be made is the one about technology. I think someone else again mentioned this earlier in their presentation, that strategy in this post-COVID-19 environment must be driven by technology. It will be driven by technology because of the fact that this is the digital age. Governments, the region over, are looking at migrating to digital platforms. We know of the phrases and the words being bandied around. E-government now is the order of the day. And right here in Barbados, our government has migrated to the kind of digital solutions that will see very shortly the discontinuation, for example, of checks, of issuing paper checks. So that means that vendors to government have to be able to use the necessary technological framework to be able to interface with government as we go forward. And what COVID-19 has done for us is that it has actually shown and demonstrated that the consuming public would prefer actually to use technology in how they interface with firms. one may say, was it a push or was it a pull strategy? The fact is there was no choice because of the national shutdown, because of the fact that the right across the region, our economies were practically on a go slow. Social distancing and the like would have kept us away from the brick and mortar type experiences. It means, therefore, that going forward, technology has to be a critical part of the strategy for the firm. So using technology for your internal business processes, be it QuickBooks, be it Dropbox or iCloud as a part of how you develop, you manage your documents and so on, or from the remote environment where the platforms like Zoom and what we're doing now, the GoToMeeting and others are used to interface with your employees, or payment systems like M-Money, PayPal, and such like. These are the new technologies now available that our MSMEs have to quickly familiarize themselves with, adopt as a part of their business model to be able to do business in this post COVID-19 environment. And it goes beyond just those platforms to the traditional ones like the social media, the website interfaces, which during this season was used as a critical mode of delivering services to consumers throughout the last 3-4 months. This is actually how consumers were actually able to interface with firms across the region, I was thinking across the world, through technology, through social media. And so our firms now need to employ these strategies in their business operations. And I can, speak to the fact that here at the Small Business Association, we've spent some months in our monthly webinar series, our monthly sensitization sessions, teaching on the types of platforms that are there, why persons ought to use them depending on the particular market that you're catering to, and as I said before, ensuring that cybersecurity issue is addressed to be able to mitigate risk. So strategy then must be driven by technology. And we have some examples which I'll share with you now during this period that we saw because of the lockdowns, because of the restrictions and movement and so on. Many firms had to think innovatively about how to get their product to the consumer. And so the images that we have here on our slide demonstrate a few of those solutions where persons were able, the first one on the left, to develop this platform on Facebook to mobilize farmers and others, caterers and small restaurants and so on, to be able to put up their products on the site and to facilitate the kind of takeout and curbside delivery options for consumers. And the one on the right, well, my right at least, is an example of how small firms have been able to rise to the occasion and create that competitive advantage over the bigger and the larger supermarkets to be able to provide the online delivery service. We've seen this during the COVID-19 experience, and I'm satisfied that as we go forward, consumers will employ this in how they treat to our small firms and how they actually procure services, products, and so on from firms. And as a result, our MSMEs have to leverage this new opportunity that has been presented. And it's not only for goods, but it's also, we're seeing here in our market for services, the provision of accounting services, the provision of medical services, and the like. It is all being done now through technology. So not only am I suggesting that strategy is going to be critical at this time? But secondly, synergies across a number of firms within the same sector. It could be horizontally, could be vertically, where there are other partners who come on board to be able to network and form those alliances to deliver on a particular good or even service. And this is a good example, I think, of what we would have seen again in this COVID-19 environment, where the UNDP would have been able to facilitate this particular product in bringing together farmers, bringing together those in the fishing sector, and as well as delivery persons, to be able to create this network of services that persons can go on to the site, they can place their orders, they have refetch that is there, mobilizing the delivery system and the delivery mode, as it were, for the particular good or service, and the farmers and other suppliers in the value chain who are involved in the actual production, growing the crops, and being able to supply them to a central repository, as it were, to be able then to deliver to the consumers. So this, we think, is a good example of the kind of synergies that we will want to see coming out of this COVID-19 environment, that we recommend really as a solution for the future. Another one I wish to share quickly is
Senator,
the largest.
Sorry, Senator, if you can finish in within 2 minutes, because
yes,
we have questions.
The largest retail company here on island, Cape Shepherd and Company, they have created a platform where micro, small, and medium enterprises can come on their platform, have access to their mobile card, and use that card to transact their payments and so on in salons and other small businesses right across the island. So these represent, I think, some synergies that have allowed us to reposition how MSMEs do business, again recognizing the importance of technology as the driver to facilitate this for the future. So my final thought really is that we are seeing what Joseph Schumpeter would have called creative destruction. This is a cyclical process of technological and socio-political change that revolutionizes economic structures, business models, and propels innovation and entrepreneurship. This is really what is happening, I think, now as a result of this COVID-19 environment. We're seeing a revolution now of change relative to how we use technology as a part of our business models and our business processes. I'll stop there for now. Thank you so kindly.
Thank you, Senator. It was very interesting. You have a wealth of knowledge, and sorry to interrupt you a little, but we wanted also to give some time for some questions, because I'm receiving many questions for you specifically, so that the debate launch. Without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Odile Minino-Bogard, who is the Executive Vice President of the Dominican Association of Exporters. Like SBA, they are very active protecting the interests of the private sector and promoting public-private sector dialogue. Odile, please. Odile, your mic is muted.
There we go. Okay. Do you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Escipión Oliveira, for your kind invitation. And also, I would like to thank Caribbean Export. Before I start, I would like to share with you a brief story. It's a story of Sir Ernest Shackleton. So in 1914, the fearless explorer, Sir Ernest Shackleton, embarked together with his team of sailors and scientists in an attempt to make the first crossing of Antarctica. Men wanted for a dangerous journey, extreme cold, months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return doubtful, honors and recognition in case of success. That was the ad he placed in the newspaper. As you can imagine, only a handful of men answered his ad, 27 to be exact. So Shackleton had the right people on his team to start his journey and undertake a great challenge. Upon his arrival, his ship, named Endurance, sank, and he and his crew were left stranded. Although he previously had a priority to successfully complete the first ever journey in Antarctica, as you can understand, his new priority was get every single member of his crew back home safely. So Shackleton soon realized that by changing his priority, his leadership role must also change. Day after day, he guided his team by giving them encouragement tests, creativity, and confidence, but being totally realistic. He sought the commitment of his people, make the crew trust his new mission. So he organized a new journey with 5 crew members to search for help. So in 1916, after 3 rescue attempts, he returned to rescue the crew, and they all returned home safely. So adaptability, more so than any other trait, is essential for life in extreme situations. So what do we do in face of COVID when we have been working for years to reach a certain goal, and all of a sudden our north changes dramatically? Shackleton did not surrender to anything. What he did was conceive a challenge of greater dimension. Adapting, being optimistic, and getting organized were essential traits that helped him move forward. And well, what was our reality before COVID? What is our reality now? The pandemic has brought a new normal. The world changed. COVID-19 arrived, and it's apparently come to stay. And of course, nobody was prepared. In his article of the April 3rd at the Wall Street Journal, Henry Kissinger, former United States Secretary of State and National Security Advisor, stated that the coronavirus pandemic will forever alter the world order. He also explained that post-coronavirus world states will have to restore people's faith in institutions. Nations cohere and flourish on the belief that their institutions can foresee calamity, arrest its impact, and restore stability. When the COVID-19 pandemic is over, many countries and institutions will be perceived as having failed. The World Trade Organization's economists project, in fact, that trade will fall in regions, and in a relatively optimistic scenario, we will see trade tumbling 13% in 2020, more so than in 2008. And in a pessimistic scenario, the decline could be as high as 32%, which would be in line with the first 3 years of the Great Depression. So challenging time needs rapid actions. So now I would like to share with you the experience and some of the measures we implemented in the Exporters Association of the Dominican Republic. As you all know, small businesses, including those run by women and young entrepreneurs, are being hit the hardest by the economic fallout. Unprecedented lockdown measures enacted to contain the spread of the coronavirus have resulted in supply chain disruptions and massive drop in demand in most sectors. To continue playing their crucial role in creating decent jobs and improving livelihoods, small businesses depend more than ever on an enabling business environment, including support for access to finance, information, and markets. Let's not forget that these enterprises, which generally employ fewer than 250 persons, are the backbone of most economies worldwide and play a key role in developing countries. So our new mission, our new why, is keeping our members safe from closing. If our members close, people lose their jobs and ultimately their livelihood. So for the sake of time, I will share with you some of the measures we have implemented as a nonprofit organization that assists the exporters in the DR. Our first measure was to establish a permanent COVID-19 assessment committee. We had them led by 2 physician experts in the area of respiratory diseases and epidemiology. Our very own, if you want, Dr. Fauci. We have been holding permanent meetings to assess the health crisis, its impact and evolution. It is clear to say that having trustworthy data is extremely valuable and enables you to take the right actions and decisions in times of crisis. Before COVID-19 hit, our board of directors would meet monthly. During COVID crisis, we have been holding weekly meetings with top-level government officials in order to assist our members, especially our MSMEs, and ensuring that the government continues to take the right actions and decisions. And we have been holding the meetings with the National Coordinator of Response to the Health Crisis, officials of the Ministry of Finance, the Director General of the Department of Labor, and the officials of Customs. We have become the voice of the needs of our members, quick answers and faster solutions, and in a whole, better results. We have created a hotline that's 24/7. It's a chat where every single day of the week, we're providing solutions to our members. And exporters basically were permitted to stay open and operating. However, the limitations in transit hours because of the lockdown took its toll on us, and the word spread. The group who originally was created for our members has grown, and we have been assisting companies regardless of whether they are members or not. And we have been using Telegram, which is a free platform, as a means of communications, and we are giving our associates, our members and non-members, official information in a timely manner. And in that chat, which is very important that we state, we have port operators, shipping companies, the Shipping Association of the Dominican Republic, major banks, exporters, but we have the entire chain of exports and all government agencies related to the export process. From the Director of Port Authorities and his staff, the customs officials, officials of the Ministry of Agriculture, members of the Export Agency of the DR, we have been able to provide official information in a timely manner and assistance in real-time situations that make the entire difference. We have solved at least up till now 200 cases, and that would previously take a couple of days. We have been solving them in a matter of hours. So that has been an innovative solution in real time that has let us solve cases. And we are keeping track, as you know, of all the cases. And basically, we are saving jobs. And this is what's most important for us. And as a matter of fact, we have been enabling business to continue and giving them more information and including support in many ways, and definitely a comprehensive support package that will make the difference in terms of what they need. And as far as the MSMEs are concerned, for us, it's a matter of that they have support in many ways. We understand that it has to be a comprehensive support package, which comprises better access to finance, working capital that helps him short-term cash flow, affordable loans, temporary exemptions, timely official information. As previously stated, data is crucial in times of crisis, and the use of technologies and encouraging widespread digital literacy is very important, as well as capacity building. Social dialogue and social cohesion will make the difference in these times. And I would like to state that it's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but one that are more responsive to change, as Darwin stated. And through this global crisis, as an organization, we have had to search for creative solutions to be responsive to change. In the times of crisis, all institutions need to step to the plate and bring their A game. Many families, their dreams, and their livelihoods are at stake. Our new and more important mission is to save companies. And as far as we're concerned, we believe that there are only three types of organizations: those who make things happen, the ones that look at things happen, and finally, the ones that ask what happened. Thank you for your time. It has been an honor speaking to you today.
Thank you very much, Odile. I just wanted to make a small clarification on Odile's presentation. She was talking when she mentioned the things that they solved. Number one was jailed employees. In fact, in Dominican Republic, we have a curfew. So sometimes if employees are found outside because they're coming from work at one time and they're jailed, that's the assistance that they give. It's not that we jail people normally in the other. It's because of the curfew, I suppose.
Yeah, it's basically the curfew. And since there's a lockdown, people are not, there's a restriction in transit, and therefore we have to be able to help them and get their transit permits. That's the reason why.
I know that you kind of rushed because of the time, so we really thank you very much for that presentation to both of you. There are several questions, so I'll go directly to Senator Holder. The first question says, in a post-COVID-19 environment, what resources or opportunities are available to assist unemployed people that wish to participate on e-commerce and that have certain level 2 qualifications? Also, what do you think in the region or in Barbados, what is being done for unemployed qualified professionals or people that lost their jobs, Senator?
Well, ironically enough, Cyprian is a rather interesting question. We have a number of programs that are designed to maximize the skill set, if you will, of persons that may have lost their jobs. If they are interested in being a part of clusters, for example, we've been mobilizing cluster programs where persons from across a number of skill sets are being trained, they're being identified, and being trained to participate in a project similar to the one I showed with the UNDP. And I don't know if you remember that particular slide, where persons who can sow, persons who can grow vegetables and so on, persons that may have resources even at home, that they can contribute that to those kind of networks. So that is something that I think persons who may wish to be a part of a network can consider. Secondly, I know that the government is putting a lot of emphasis on retooling and retraining, building skills and so on, and it's a good opportunity for those persons to get involved in those programs to help to develop those skills as a result of going digital. There are opportunities now for those persons to be re-employed and re-engaged in helping with the thrust, helping with the government's agenda to move to that digital environment. As you know, many of our departments would have scores and scores and scores of boxes of paper and records and data physically that now need to be digitized. And so persons are being encouraged to join those training programs where they can develop their skills and the like to be involved in those. So we have the networks, we have the retooling and the retraining opportunities being offered for those that have lost their jobs, and thirdly, might I add, we offer a number of training programs here as well. And I think, personally speaking, this is a good opportunity for persons to hone their skills, to be trained in the new areas for business, the digital economy, as it were, the digital areas, the areas driven by technology, and as they do so, I am satisfied that there are lots of opportunities that can be explored as a result of now having those new skills. I'm not sure if the person is that query that is from Barbados or not, but if they're from here, I would recommend that they get in contact with us for sure, that we can help point them in the direction relative to how they can either get involved in the training programs that are ongoing or look to get involved in those networks and those clusters that have been developed.
Thank you very much, Senator Holder. Now for Mrs. Odile Minino, can you elaborate a little bit on two things? First, what kind of training are exporters asking right now, or what type of enhancement of training are exporters asking to be able to adapt to the new situation? And second, how can we work more with the diaspora from the diaspora in developed countries to enhance our competitiveness in these difficult times, at a time that we're losing a lot of money from abroad that's coming, that used to come? So those two questions, working with diaspora and the training that you think is needed for exporters.
Well, actually, in terms of training, it's very wide, the spectrum. It can go from digital literacy and being able to use technologies in a better form to be able to export more, but also as well as the uses of time right now. People are finding it difficult to be able to be as proactive or work from the home. So people are needing those type of elements and to be able to tackle down working since their homes, which is a little bit difficult. And also in terms of competitiveness, people are open to learning different capacity buildings. So it has been very, very useful the time that people are at home. They're trying to learn more and they're open to more capacity building. But in terms of the diaspora, definitely we have to be able to use the diaspora as an opportunity to export more. I feel that definitely having so many Dominicans and worldwide, it's an opportunity that we have to take into account so that they can be the ambassadors, as we may say, of our brands in other places. So definitely there's an opportunity there, and we have to be able to tap into that to be able to grow our exports.
Thank you very much, Odile. A question for Senator Holder. Can you elaborate a little bit on the kind of assistance that Caribbean business support organizations will need to continue helping the private sector? This is a question for Ms. Valeria de Oliveira. And also, can you talk about what policy reforms are being put in place at national or Caribbean level to assist companies to do the digital trade and to change their ways of doing business?
Okay, I think
yeah,
both questions, if I may sound interrelated, because we're talking really about support. What kind of support we ought to be considering at this time? It's a very good question, because as I mentioned in my presentation, when I saw the topic that was given, immediately it focused, in my view, on the relevance and the importance of business support organizations at this time. We are even more critical now in a post-COVID-19 environment than before. And if I can use my organization as an example, we focus on 4 critical areas. The first one is lobbying. And so this will go into the second question that the individual asked about national policies and so on. The fact is that we have to continue as BSOs to lobby for an enabling business environment. I think this is a good time to revisit some of the pieces of legislation that exist to administer MSMEs. For example, we still have some countries in CARIFORUM that don't have laws, don't have a piece of legislation that treats to MSMEs, and then there are many without policy. So I think that this is a good opportunity for us to refocus. We need to have policies that are enabling, policies that will address development and sustainability and so on of firms, and also strategies from the governmental level that will treat to this. So this is something that the BSO, in my view, ought to have top of mind and to lobby their governments to be able to put in place. We must have enabling legislation at this time. Quickly, I know I'm coming to a few other points, but in the COVID-19 environment with the lockdowns, you had people working remotely, and many of us don't have legislation to govern how do you relate to employees in a remote environment. So you had bosses, you had employers calling the employees at 9 o'clock at night and at 7 o'clock at night, giving them instructions to do things, because we don't have right now that kind of legislative environment. So this is definitely an opportunity for us to address that. So lobbying is critical. The second area for us at the BSO relates to our education and training mandate. I can't say enough about training and capacity building for MSMEs, for leaders, for self-employed persons. You have to build skills. You have to understand what are the techniques and the competencies and so on needed for managing firms in this environment. Too many times you hear the point being made that when you go to the financial institution, you can't present your case. You don't know how to develop a business plan. You don't even know beyond the business plan sometimes how to even sell your concept. One of the reasons why angel investing, I think, has not taken shape, especially here. I'm not sure about the others, but here in Barbados, that many times the entrepreneur goes before the investors and they can't even pitch their concept. They can't even sell or promote their business idea. So we need to focus on training and education, building skills, building capacity, especially for the self-employed person, the manager, him or herself, to be able to grow that business. And then thirdly, the business support organization has to focus on business development activities, helping the business now to employ marketing strategies. What are the kind of commercialization strategies that you need to enhance, to strengthen as you go forward? How do you internationalize? The fact is, we cannot only focus on our domestic space. We have to maximize what the CARIFORUM space provides for us. I know that Caribbean Export, for example, has the market intelligence tools that are there available to help with building export strategies, help with the internationalization of your firms. I commend it. I've been a part of it. I love it. I think it is critical for MSMEs to understand how to build vibrant export strategies, how to even maximize on your domestic space. So business development activities and building capacity at that level, again, is the third plank. So these are the three critical areas that I feel that business support organizations have to focus on at this time: lobbying, training, education, and business development services to help build capacity.
Thank you very much, Senator. I will one last question for Ms. Menino, and then I'll ask each one of you to wrap up. Ms. Menino, on this crisis, how do you see the importance of the collaboration between Caribbean states among each other to have a strong dialogue and a strong regional output, especially trying to create value chain? So how do you value that importance, and how can we go forward in creating that regional space and more collaboration between the countries? And if you could also touch upon how can we try to integrate also the informal sector to the work that is being happening, because of course the informal sector in a region is very important and it's kind of being left out of all the support that's being received. So there are two tough questions. If you can please elaborate on those.
Okay, so definitely I truly believe that we have to work together. Being able to integrate the region as the Caribbean and being stronger, we can only be stronger together. And I truly believe that it has come a time where we have to stick together, because at the end of the day, if we don't work together as a region and we start to integrate and be able to use each other's strengths to put forward products and integrate, at the end of the day, we're letting other regions go forward, and we're not going to be able to compete. So we have to see each other as brothers and sisters and be able to work together towards a common goal. And I think that's doable. It's a matter of seeing together what we have and the strength that each other has, and in implementing a plan and a strategy, and being able to share our experiences that we have had and work together towards that common goal. And in terms of the other question was, sorry?
How to integrate more the informal economy into the development of the countries.
That's capital, because at the end of the day, if we don't integrate informal economies, we're going to have people that are going to be outside of the system, and we have to work so that they are formalized. The more people become formalized, the more we're going to have companies that will create jobs, and people will have the social security and everything in order. So we have to try to bring the informal companies toward the formality, and it has to be a government goal, but we also, as the stakeholders, have a role to play. I believe that as far as organizations are concerned, we also have to serve the community and to be able to teach them how to become more formalized and show them the benefits of what companies can become as far as being formal is concerned. So it's a part that the government plays a role, but also organizations in the private sector can play a very interesting role, fostering informal sectors so that they become formal, and in turn they can grow and prosper. Because at the end of the day, we want more sustainability in the country, and we want people to prosper and grow. And the only way that we can attain that is through formality. So definitely, it's a dual role we have to play. It's both the government and the private sector. We have to work together to formalize informal enterprises.
Thank you very much, Ms. Menino. So, Senator, please, we would love to have a 1-minute wrap-up of ideas of your message to the audience, please.
Sure. I think the slogan at the very beginning, the quote rather at the beginning, captures it all for me. Do not waste the crisis. Don't waste it. Let us use this opportunity to retool ourselves. Let us use this opportunity to employ the technologies to innovate. You know, the fact is that from here on in, there will be a new normal in how business is done. That is just the reality of it. So don't let us waste it. Let us bring together all of the stakeholders, government, business support organizations, MSMEs, and let us craft the appropriate strategies and solutions for the future.
Thank you very much, Senator. Odile, your 1-minute wrap-up.
So basically, it's a matter of adapting. This new reality has come, it has hit, none of us were prepared. It's time to adapt, be creative, be innovative. We have to see this as an opportunity. I agree completely with Senator Holder. We have to be able to reimagine a new future. And in terms of SMEs are concerned, we as organizations, we have to help them and assist them because it's now a matter of survival, and we have to give them all our best so that they are able to survive this crisis and continue to grow and prosper. So it's now a matter of working together, private and public sector, and making the difference. So we have to make the difference. If we don't do this now, later on, they are going to say that we failed. So we have to give it our best.
Thank you very much for both of you. It has been a great exchange. I think that we can say that from your interventions and interventions of the other panelists is to recognize that no country, sector, or region can handle this crisis alone. So I really hope that this it brings us more together, that we continue talking to each other and collaborating. So it has been an honor for me participating in today's debate. I'll cede the floor to my colleague, Ms. Joellen Larrea, that is going to talk to you about how to get the best of Caribbean Exports platform and others. Thanks a lot for your time, and thanks a lot for the distinguished panelists. It has been an honor working with you today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to everyone, and happy MSME Day.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you from Brussels. Bye.
Thank you everybody for your time today. After this presentation, after this webinar has actually finished, we will be sharing the full recording. So you will have access to all of the presentations that you have seen today, which you can go through at your leisure. We will also be posting it on our YouTube channel, and also on our website, carib-export.com. So I do encourage you to visit our website for more opportunities that we will be delivering over the coming weeks. As you would have heard, that we have been running a series of webinars which have been very well received, and we will imminently be launching a direct support grant program as well. So please do, if you haven't already subscribed to our mailing list or to our website, please do so at our website, so that you don't miss out on any of the opportunities. And obviously, if you do have any questions that have been unanswered, that have emanated from this webinar, do feel free to shoot us an email. You would all have my email address there from the registration of this webinar. So without further ado, I know it could be quite late for those people in Europe. So once again, thank you very much to all of our speakers for your time this afternoon, and a happy MSME Day to all of you.
Yes, just one thing. Thanks a million also to the CARICOM Secretariat, to the CARIFORUM Directorate, to the European Union, to the ACP, to the Organization of African, Caribbean, Pacific States. We have been a part of a great debate, and to our distinguished panelists, it has been a great experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.
God bless you all.
Thank you.